Hello, everybody. This is Laurie Meyer, and I am here today to share a very fun sort of faux shaker card. It is not a traditional shaker card like the ones that we have made before where there's a lot of thickness. This is actually using one of the translucent or the clear envelopes, and also some products from the Joy of Christmas suite. But it definitely is a very fun take, I think, on a shaker card. And if I shake this, the camera's going to go a little bit nutty. So I'm really going to just kind of tap it. And you'll see if you look at some of those pieces that they definitely are moving. And if I shook it more violently, I promise you that things would move a lot faster. But I don't want to make you dizzy while you're staring at it. I wanted to share a card that I made. Believe it or not, I think this was maybe 3 years ago, which is crazy, kind of in the middle of the pandemic. But this is a card that is very, very similar. And I went back to an old design. I love doing that. I like going back through and seeing what I've made in the past and kind of changing it up a little bit. Obviously, we've got a portrait here, we've got a landscape card here, definitely different stamps and papers and all of that. But it is fun if you have a design that you've used in the past to go back and look at it. It's just great to revisit and think about whether you can use it again. This card, like I mentioned, has quite a few items that come from an absolutely gorgeous suite. It is in the new mini catalog, and it starts on page 28. There is so much in this suite. 2 stamp sets, 2 die sets, some little sequins and gems, ribbon, paper, and more paper. And I had to get it just because I knew that it needed to end up in my stash. And I've been having an awful lot of fun with many, many elements of the suite and have made quite a few different cards. But this is the one that we're going to do today. I'm going to show you the pieces. We'll talk about the sizes of the different pieces of paper. And as we do that, we're going to put the card together. And I think you'll see that it comes together pretty quickly. The card base is one of the new colors. It is pecan pie or pecan pie, depending upon how you say pecan, sorry. And it is a really, really pretty deep brown. It almost has a hint of a little bit of a yellow in it. It's really just a gorgeous, gorgeous color. The card base is a traditional A2 size. So it's 8.5 by 5.5. And then on the 8.5-inch side, it's scored at 4.25. We're all very, very familiar with that size. And I'm going to turn it into a landscape. The second piece of paper that goes on the front comes from the designer series paper. And I'm going to pull my catalog out one more time to show you that. It comes from this 12 by 12 paper. It's called the Joy of Christmas. And I know we all say that we have enough designer series paper in our stash. That's probably true. But this is one of those that just really cried out to me with the gorgeous colors and the gorgeous patterns. And you're going to see, I'm going to bring in the example card that I have, that I'm going to use a different plaid on the one that I'm going to make. So we've got the red plaid and the green plaid. And then on each of those on the back is a really nice pecan pie that is the primary color on the back. The red in this is cherry cobbler and real red, and then the greens are old olive and shaded spruce. So rather than the green, I'm going to kind of switch this up. I thought it would be interesting to do a different color combination. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to tell you the size of the designer series paper. you're going to see it's just a little bit narrower and a little bit less in height than our card base. The width measures 5 3/8. So it's an 1/8 of an inch less than our card base. So 5 3/8. And then the height is 4 1/8. So again, it's an 1/8 of an inch less in height. So 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And that is simply going to get adhered to the front of our card base. It really is a pretty quick card to put together. And you'll notice that as I turned over this piece of designer series paper, and you can compare the colors that are in the side that you can see right now with the pecan pie card base. And it is just simply gorgeous. There are hints of darker and lighter pecan pie in there. And also it has a little bit of a musical note theme. And I'm just going to do my best to center this. It will have a very small border around the outside. It's going to be about a 1/16 of an inch. And I just wanted it to have a very tiny border. The focal point is really going to be on the shaker part. Just going to turn that over and give it a little bit of a burnish with my fingers so that that designer series paper is going to stay. So we have the beginning of our card. The real focal point, though, again, if I bring out the example, is the shaker piece. And the first thing we're going to do is build the actual shaker part. So we're going to get one of our envelopes, another piece of the designer series paper, and we're also going to get some of the gems and the sequins, and we're going to build our shaker and put that on. So let's take a peek at what those components are. So to make your shaker, what I'm going to use, and I'm going to cheat, is I'm going to use a piece of the designer series paper. I'm also using a different design than I did on the original. These are very close if you look at the pattern side by side, but they definitely are different. On the card that I made a few years ago, I actually stamped the piece that goes inside the shaker. So you have options. You could create your own, or if you wanted to, you can use designer series paper. I like using designer series paper when I can, especially when it comes to Christmas cards. I find that if I have a really quick card for Christmas that still has a nice bling to it, a nice, just pretty design, I like a quick card, and this is definitely a quick one. This piece of designer series paper measures 4 3/8 by 3 1/8, but I want you to hold off cutting your paper for 1 minute, and I'll make sure you understand that in just a second. But this one that I have, and I'm going to be using one of the clear envelopes from Stampin' Up. This measures 4 3/8 by 3 1/8. So I'm going to pull in my clear medium envelopes, and I want to show you where you can find those in the catalog. This is the annual catalog, and they are on page 135, and they're right down here at the bottom. You get 50 in a package for $7. So they really are very economical. And you can also mail your cards in these envelopes. You literally can do that. Let's say that I wanted to mail a card like this in the envelope. What I would probably do is use this as my address side, and I might even put a white label, put the person's name and my return address, pop that into the envelope, and then the stamp would go on the outside envelope. One thing I would suggest is if you do use these envelopes to mail your cards, you might want to check with your local post office because they might need to hand cancel them. And that could be just a tad bit more in terms of cost, but it's kind of fun because you have a preview of your card that's traveling through the mail. The mail people, I think, would really like it. And it would be a nice little preview when it gets to your recipient as well. So what I'm going to use to make my shaker piece is one of these clear envelopes. I am going to cut it, but I am going to use that as the primary bag, if you want to call it that, to hold my shaker. I wanted you to hold off for just a minute in cutting your paper, because if you are not using a clear envelope from Stampin' Up, the dimensions of your paper might be a little different. And the way to really figure this out is to, if you take a look at the edge of that envelope on 3 sides versus the height of this piece, which again is 4 3/8, you can barely see it going all the way around. You do not need a Stampin' Up! Envelope to make this card. So if you have, let's say you have a package of gems that you purchased, or some other product that you have, or maybe just even a different size envelope, as long as 3 of the sides are sealed and that envelope fits within the size of your card, you're going to be able to use it. So just get your ruler out and figure out a very small difference between the width of your envelope and the paper that you're going to cut. And then you can decide how wide your paper is going to be. But as you do that, take into consideration how big your card is so that you know that it will look like it's about in the center when you are done. So the key is for this, that you have an envelope that is sealed on 3 sides. We're going to tuck our paper in here in just a minute and put in our little gems and everything as well. And then also make sure that it is appropriate to the size of the card that you're going to make. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to open up the flap, and I'm going to put this upside down. Well, it really doesn't matter. So I will change my mind because it really doesn't matter. And I'm just going to tuck that piece of designer series paper into the envelope. And it's going to be a little bit of a tight fit, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be super tight. If it's a little looser than what I have here, it's fine. It just needs to get into the envelope. And then what you also want to make sure is that once it's in there, if you look at just right at the edge, you don't want the distance between the edge of the bag and the beginning of your paper to be wide enough to let any of the little gems that you're going to be putting in just slip around the backside. That is not what you want. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut our bag. And the way that I suggest that you do this is that you give yourself about 1.25 inches from the edge of the paper to where you're going to cut. And it's really easy to see that when you put it into your paper trimmer. So if I bring my paper trimmer in and I put my paper in the bag, the edge of that paper, I'm putting it right at the 1.25 inch line. And I am going to just cut that off. So now I have an extra piece of the envelope. And frankly, that's probably just going to go into the trash. There's not necessarily going to be a great use for that little piece. You can see that I have an extra portion over here. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to go ahead and miter my edge. So I don't need to make this a very wide miter, and this is going to help when I eventually fold it over and adhere it to the back. So it's like I just cut off a little corner, but I put it toward the middle. And I'm right-handed, so I'm going to flip this over And I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. And you don't need to be so precise that the mitering is the same on either end. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my gems and sequins, and I'm going to add some of those inside the bag. These are the loose holly gems and sequins. And these are very pretty. They're very bright in terms of color. What is interesting is that none of them has adhesive, which is good for this kind of project where I'm going to be putting some of them inside. I'm also very mindful of what I'm going to put in the bag, and let me explain what I mean by that. So I'm trying to get out examples of the 4 different kinds of little gems that are in here. Probably just easy to take them out. There are 2 sizes of these little red gems. Finally got one of the smaller ones. And I am not going to put in any of the little red ones on the inside of the bag. And here's the reason. If I put them in and they turn over, they're going to show silver. I want the red to show. So on my example, anywhere you see the red, I've actually adhered those on the outside of the bag. And that's something that I really like to do because I think it pulls the whole design together. So I am going to purposely put some of these pieces on my work surface, and I'm going to move the red off to the side because I don't want them to go inside. That's my preference. If you want to put some in and you don't care, or you want to futz around and get them so that they're right side up, go for it. It is completely up to you. And then what I'm going to do is simply open up my bag and kind of pinch the sides and put in some of these fun little sequins. They're really cute. They are leaves and musical notes, and they really add some real sparkle. And this is also where it is personal preference. Some folks don't like to put a lot of them in. Some people like to really, really, really fill them up. And you're going to see that they're going to kind of crowd themselves together. And that's where you'll see I've got my thumb underneath, and I'm just shaking them up a little bit to try and see if I think that's enough. And for me, I think that is enough. I'll do some more on the outside. But get to the point where you believe you have enough in the bag. You can add more. We're not going to permanently seal this. We're going to do kind of a dry run. And what we're going to do is grab a piece of Scotch tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry fit this. I want to see how tightly I need to pull that flap around to the back in order to still allow those sequins to move around. So I'm just going to fold over, and this is folding obviously over the side that I mitered. I'm going to hold it with my thumb and see, and sorry if I'm making you dizzy with the camera, see if I can make those sequins move, and I can. So I'm just going to come around the back, and because I'm using tape, if I don't like where the flap is right now, I can take that up and I can move it. And I'm just going to try it again and see if I can move those pieces around, and I can. So I got kind of lucky that time, but you might need to untape and either loosen or tighten, whatever makes you happy, to get those pieces moving however you want them to move. And then when you're happy with that, when the pieces are moving the way that you want them to, I suggest that you take a bone folder and you just give that edge of the bag a nice crease. That's going to do a couple things. It's going to lay that plastic envelope down a little bit more, so it will lay a little bit more flat on your card. And it's also going to help the sequins to have enough room to move around. And then come on the back and do that as well. And then you should be able to turn it over and things will still move. And mine are definitely still moving. That's essentially your shaker piece. And what I'm going to do with that is I am going to grab, and you can use any kind of adhesive that you would like. I am simply going to attach that to the front of my card, and then I will finish up the rest of it. There are many different adhesives. Liquid glue will definitely work. It will give you a little bit of an opportunity to wiggle it around and get it as centered as you would like. You can also use tear and tape. You can use a tape runner. It's really up to you. I am going to use some tear and tape because I simply have that out on my desk. And if I can find the end, just put a couple of pieces. Whatever kind of adhesive you use, a couple things to think about. You don't want to put the adhesive way at the edge, because if that adhesive dries and you see it, you'll see the adhesive from the front. So as you're putting on either your Tombow, your tape runner, your tear and tape, think about putting the adhesive a little bit more toward the center. And that way you will be assured that when you put this on your card and you flip everything around, no one will be able to see that adhesive. Tear and tape, like I said, an option. So really your choice of what you would like to use. And I'll be honest, I was not a huge tear and tape fan until fairly recently. I don't even know why, to be honest with you, but it wasn't one of those things that I would automatically reach for to use to put cards together. It is super strong. It is really quick, and it's not messy either, you know, because at this point, because the wax paper is still on the back, I am not getting any kind of residual anything on my fingers. If you do use tear and tape, good thing to do before you pull the wax paper off is to just give it a little bit of burnishing with your bone folder. And then one thing I have found invaluable in getting the wax paper off is the take your pick tool, excuse me, and just go up underneath and pull it off. Up underneath here, pull it off. This take your pick tool is a wonderful thing. I use it all the time, and I'm going to use the other end when I put on some of the gems on the outside. It definitely is super, super handy and has many, many different uses. All right. So now that I have the shaker piece done, I'm going to pull my card base back in. I am checking to make sure I know how that card is opening. And then I'm going to take my shaker piece. And as silly as this may sound, before I put it down, I'm just going to look at this and try to figure out what looks like it is more vertical, that way or that way. And the beauty of this designer series paper is it really doesn't matter. But to me, because of some of these pieces that I happen to have on this piece, this looks like it's a little bit more vertical. And then I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to say bad things about myself. And I'm just going to lay that down. And I'm going to go ahead and flip it over. And again, give it a nice little burnish. And you can see that those pieces are moving around. Again, I'm not going to shake it violently because the camera will go a little nutty, but the shaker bits are shaken. So just a few more things that we need to do to finish this card. And one is to put the sentiment on. And I have done some prep on this. The sentiment that I'm going to use is this really, I think, gorgeous Noel. And I wanted to show you a couple of really quick tips and tricks on how to do this. And as I do it, we're just going to put everything together. So in the suite that we've been talking about, there is a Joy of Noel stamp set. And there is a corresponding Joy of Noel die set. They're awesome. A lot of pretty foliage, really nice sentiment here. I'm going to grab this die. And I'm going to also, I've already done this, but want to show you the stamp. It almost looks Scandinavian to me, with a little bit of a foliage in the words or in the letters themselves. And what I did is I mounted that stamp. I actually stamped it onto basic white. I'm going to use these, so I don't want to lose them. I'm just going to push them off to the side. I stamped them on basic white using shaded spruce, and this is what that looks like. So this would be a really nice sentiment to use just like this. You know, the letters are nicely lined. They're all straight. They're all perfectly in a square. And it could easily be cut out and put onto a card, and that would be absolutely gorgeous. If you want to, you can also cut those letters by using the die, and this is not anything difficult. The letters in the die go directly over the letters in the stamp, and then through the magic of putting that through a die cutting machine, you get individual letters, which is cool because you can use these and you can actually, you know, rather than have Noel written in 4 different parts in a square, you can have them in a row and actually use them like this. And that's what I'm going to do. But what I want to show you is a really cool trick on how to get the letters to line up. And I did my best on here to try to get the bottom of all of those letters to be at the same level. And let me show you what that trick is. So I'm going to bring in a piece of grid paper. It doesn't need to be grid paper, but it does need to be a straight line. And you only need the bottom of the line. And a piece of washi tape is what I would suggest, or some other kind of Post-it note or something like that. You're going to notice that I put those letters onto a piece of pecan pie cardstock, and that is a die that is in the other die set that is with the suite. This one is beyond nuts. This is just one of the most gorgeous die sets. It's crazy. It's this one right here. I've made cards with this die, unbelievable. So this is the one that I used, and I cut out a piece of pecan pie, and that's what I'm going to use to put Noel on. But if you ever want beautiful Christmas dies, highly recommend those. They're absolutely gorgeous. So what I'm going to try to do, again, to the best that I can, is I'm going to try to line up my Noel pieces so that they will fit onto the width of that little die cut. And I'm going to pick a line. I'm going to pick where the 2-inch line is. And I'm just going to take my letters. And again, I'm going to do my best. This is where you get Christmas music or a glass of wine or something to distract you. while you put these together. And notice the bottom of these, I'm just putting on that 2-inch line. And I also find the more you futz around with them, the more they're going to just drive you nuts, because they will move a teeny bit if you touch them. So I'm just lining them up, trying to line them up on that line. One more, please work. Almost there. Just trying to get this little L to get close enough so that, again, even the spacing looks about right. That's not too bad. So I'm gonna let it go. 90% is good enough, right? All right, so let it go. There we go. So those letters are pretty okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take a piece of washi tape or a piece of Post-it note or something that is going to pick up all of the letters at the same time. And darn it, I'm futzing around with this because I want that O to be a little bit more straight. Good enough. Close enough. I'm going to take that piece of washi tape and I'm going to put it straight down, and I've captured all of them at the same time. Brilliant. Darn it. Almost brilliant. All right. So we're going to put that little guy back. That's okay. We're going to get it. I'm not going to fool us here. If you growl at it, it also helps. All right, there we go. I'm going to hold that down. There's my L. Close enough for government work. Just press that down. And then I should be able to pull all of these up together. So there we go. They're all there together. And then what I can simply do, and you don't need a lot of glue for this, is I'm going to put adhesive kind of in the middle of those letters. I don't need it on the bottom for a couple reasons. I don't know exactly how much room I'm going to have at the bottom, because I'm really focused more on getting these little dudes attached. I've used this trick when I have made personalized cards, like for our grandsons' graduations and other things. And it's really kind of fun because I've been able to, cut out their names using dies with the particular letters in their names, and then adding them to the card exactly how I want. And I want my washi tape to be a little bit longer, so I just added a little bit of another piece, and I'm standing directly on the top of this. Should probably have made my initial washi tape a little bit longer, but that's okay. And I'm just going to look left and right, and close enough, and then touch the middle of each of those letters. And then I'm going to pull the tape, the washi tape, really close and down at an angle. I'm trying to just get that off. And there's my Noel. And what's nice about this, because I used the liquid glue, is if I see anything that needs a little adjustment, like that O, I want it to come down just a tad. There we go. And it's pretty much in the middle. So that's just a really easy trick to use when you are lining up letters to get them so that they look pretty straight. And I think that one came out pretty okay. All right, just a couple more things on this. We need to get our Noel attached. And I also put a bow on the bottom. I thought that would be kind of cool, just for a little bit of a bling. And I used the Elegant trim. I think I'm addicted to this trim because I use it quite a bit. And what I'm going to do on this is I am going to tape this to the back. And I'm going to do kind of a dry fit again, just kind of hold it over the card and figure out about where it would look good. And then I'm going to turn that over. And I'm going to actually tape a little bit of the tail. I want the tail to come down. I'm interested in where the bow is, but I want that tail to come down. So I'm just going to put tape there. And then I'll put a little bit of tape on that other piece that's going to come down. I don't care that that's twisted because you're not going to see that from the front. It will look perfectly fine. And I'll put a little bit of tape on that other piece that's going to hang down. And then I'll just look at it one more time. Let's see. And that looks okay to me. All right. And then I do want to have the sentiment pop a little bit. So I am going to use dimensionals. And here are my dimensionals. You can tell I have used them with love. And it doesn't matter what the shape is of these. We all have used dimensionals. We all have cut our dimensionals like this. I think some people think that that's a little excessive. I don't. I think it is incredibly frugal. One thing I am not going to do when I do this, I am not going to put any dimensional over any part of that twine because that twine is thick and I don't want the twine to get in the way of the adhesive that I am going to use on this. So I'm being very, very careful when I put the dimensional on that I'm not getting it anywhere near the twine. And then I'm going to just hold it here and see if there are any places that feel like there's a void where I might need to put another dimensional, and it feels fine to me. So I'm going to take this off. I saw the coolest tip about dimensionals from two guys over in the UK who are Stampin' Up! Demonstrators. And what they do when they get a package of dimensionals is they take a marker. And if you think about how dimensionals are, so like this, where you get a bunch of them, they take a marker and they draw right in the middle of each of the rows. The reason they do that is two things. One is when you take off these pieces of wax paper, you can tell if the wax is off if there's not part of a line that is on the dimensional. I think that's brilliant. And then also, the wax paper is a little bit easier to see when you're cleaning up if it has a line on it. So here what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get this kind of centered and put it where I want it to go. And this is going to be not a one-shot deal because I can pull it up if I want, but yeah, that's close enough. And then I'm going to go ahead and just snip off a little bit on the bottom of the tails. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is add a few of these little gems on the outside. I'll bring back in the example. I just think it's kind of cool because it gives the illusion that the gems are both inside and out, because they are, but it also adds, I think, a little bit more to the pattern. And this is where I'm going to use the other side of the Take Your Pick tool. It's a little sticky, gummy part, and I can actually pick up a gem and I can put it down. And I'm going to end up putting that one right there. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can add these gems. You can use glue dots and put a glue dot down and then add the gem to the top. I've put Tombow glue in this little container. It's got a really nice, very pointed, very small opening. So I'm not going to get a lot of glue. And that glue is going to dry clear, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I could put glue dots, but something this small, this little red gem, probably not going to be super happy with a glue dot. So I'm going to be, as I've already done, putting that on with just a teeny bit of liquid glue. And then helping with my fingernail, getting that right there. And it adds some dimension. It just adds, I think, some really neat interest. It's also kind of fun to make sure that people who receive the card know that there are elements that are meant to be seen, like these little gems. So I think adding them to the outside is a hint. This little guy is stubborn. There we go. It's a hint so that they know that there's something on the inside. It's like a little present that they're going to get when they open up and when they see that it's a shaker card. You can also give them a hint on the inside in your message, you know, hope your holiday is shaken up, or shake up your holiday by moving this card around, whatever you want to do. So just adding a couple of these fun little gems on the outside, and you get the idea. We'll do one more of the big red, and then I may come in a little bit later, figure out where I want to add a couple of the green leaves. So this is the second card, the one that we have been focused on, with just a little bit of a different color design with the red plaid and the green Noel. And then we have the sample card that I started with the green plaid and the red Noel. Definitely same layout, same basic pattern, but also very different. Designer series papers are different also. I hope you use this design, this idea of using the clear envelopes or another kind of bag that you have, that you might have from a product that you've purchased, and give this a shot. It's fun. And I think you saw that these are pretty quick. And I guarantee that when the recipient opens the envelope and pulls this out, the first thing they're going to do is smile, because they're going to have something that they know that you made especially for them. And then they're going to have a lot of fun actually shaking the card. So enjoy, and I would love to see what you make.